Okay. Hi, I'm Larry Hamilton. I'm a professor of sociology at the University of New Hampshire and a senior fellow at the Carsey School of Public Policy. And I'm talking today about a Carsey Perspectives brief that we just published this morning. I'm going to do that by showing go through a few slides, and then I guess we'll open it up for any kind of question and discussion about what we found and what we did. So the title of our brief is Trusting Scientists More Than the Government, New Hampshire Perceptions of the Pandemic. As I say, it was published today. You can find this on the Carsey School website and you can either read it online or download a PDF, share it with anyone you want. It's only 2 pages, and it's very recent research. On the right, you see what it looks like. This was written by myself and Tom Safford and other sociologists here at the University of New Hampshire. And this 2-page brief focuses on 3 survey questions that we asked that are related to the current coronavirus crisis. The first one: have you changed your daily routine in any way specifically because of the coronavirus? And people could answer, no changes to my daily routine, minor changes only, such as washing hands more often, and major changes such as leaving home less often. In the graphic there, you see what the results were. More than 3/4 of the respondents said they made major changes. Now, we asked this first in March, before the governor's stay-at-home order. And so the results you're seeing on the right are the March results, that even then, even before the official order, more than 3/4 said they were making major changes to their daily routine, and only 6% said they were making no changes. We also asked how confident people are in the federal government's ability to respond effectively to the current outbreak of coronavirus in the United States. They could answer very confident, some put confident, not very confident, or not confident at all. And only a minority, less than 50%, chose either very confident or even somewhat confident. So not very high marks for confidence in the federal government's ability to respond. And the third question I'll talk about today, we asked, as a source of information about the coronavirus, would you say that you trust, don't trust, or are unsure about science agencies such as the Centers for Disease Control, or CDC, that study infectious diseases? And here again, we've got more than 3/4 saying that they trust science agencies. So we asked that question on the March poll, and I just showed you the results. Those last 3 graphics are all results from the March poll. Then we asked the exact same questions of New Hampshire residents again in April, almost a month later. And the world had changed during that time. The pandemic had advanced very substantially, but the survey responses changed hardly at all. These are not significant differences. So the blue bars here you see are the March poll results. The red bars are the April poll results. So in March, when making major changes means you were going out to dinner less often or you were canceling some of your travel plans, 77% said they were making major changes. In April, people were staying home from work, and yet the percentage barely shifted, just 79%. Confidence in the federal government, back in March, only 46% said they were somewhat or very confident in the federal government's ability. And in April, we found almost the same, 47%, somewhat or very confident. And finally, trust in science agencies such as the CDC. In March, we found 77% were confident. In April, that had dropped a few points, not significantly. There'd been, by that point, some publicity about the failure of the CDC in terms of the early response and testing in the United States. But still, we had 72% expressing confidence in science agencies such as the CDC. Okay, just to set the stage for that, this is what was happening with coronavirus with COVID-19 confirmed cases in New Hampshire over that period. The height of the bars here is the number of new cases confirmed each day, going from March 8th to May 4th. And we've highlighted in blue the time we were conducting our March survey that interviewed about 650 New Hampshire residents. So you can see at that time, the number of new cases each day varied from around 5 to a little over 20. And it was climbing, but relatively small. Then there's a red vertical line. Let's see if we can highlight that. This thing here is when Governor Sununu issued his stay-at-home order. So he did it following this ramp up. And then there's about a 10-day delay before any sort of policy change shows up in the COVID diagnoses, just because of the latency of the disease. So it continued to climb, and this is a period that we would call an exponential increase here. And then about 10 days after the stay-at-home order, you see a drop-off in the daily number of cases, but it's at a much higher level now. We're looking sometimes over 60 cases per day, whereas back here we were 5. So here you kind of see the stay-at-home order taking effect and reducing the rate of new cases each day. Even so, the rate of new cases is way higher than it was back here. The red bars here are the period of our second poll, the April poll. That was April 16 to 20th, I believe. And we interviewed more than 1,000 people at that time, asking the same 3 questions along with a number of others. And then since then, we've just been tracking what's been going on. And what you see is that basically there was an early period of exponential growth. The stay-at-home order had some effects. And following that, the growth was really exponential, but it's the blue line here is the 7-day average, and that has continued to climb. So it's setting new high points out here. The disease has not been stopped or reversed by the stay-at-home order. It was slowed. So what does our analysis show? Well, basically, we're seeing this real disconnect between a large amount of trust expressed in scientists and a low amount of confidence expressed in the federal government. But it's somewhat different people that are expressing confidence in the government and trust in the scientists. This graphic shows as you go left to right here, it's greater confidence in the federal government. So these are the people who say they're not at all confident. These are the people who say they're very confident. As you go low to high here, this is the probability they said they would be making major changes in their behavior. And then the 3 colors here are how much they trusted the CDC. So that's a little bit complicated, but basically here's what's happening. Up here, you have the people who trust scientists and don't have any confidence in the federal government, and they are more than 90% likely to report having made major changes in behavior. And down here at the other corner of the graph, you have the people who are very confident in the federal government and do not trust scientists, and they have something less than a 50% chance of making major changes. So you really see a cultural difference here that links to a lot of research that social science have been doing over more than the last 10 years, finding there are very big socio-political differences in attitudes towards science. And those are now playing out in how people respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Specifically, these folks up here who trust scientists and don't much trust the federal government are more likely to follow the scientific advice and not change their behavior very much, even if official restrictions against staying at home are lifted, even if the restrictions are eased. On the other hand, these people down here who don't trust scientists as much, but are very much more confident in the government, are likely to respond fairly quickly. So you're likely to see people moving in different directions, or one group not moving very much and another group moving very quickly, if government policy is shifted over the next weeks and months. So that's a quick sketch of our brief. I'll mention that although this just came out today, it is connected to other things we've written over the past few weeks. 2 others, one about about the March survey only, which is much more detail about the questions and the findings. And another one linking this back to earlier research we'd done on a previous pandemic involving the Zika virus back in 2016, where surprisingly similar results occurred in terms of public perceptions. And my last slide is just links to these Carsey briefs. As I've said, you can certainly download them, read them for yourself, and learn much more than I've sketched out in just a few minutes here. So with that, I'm going to sort of unshare the screen here and return to a more conversational view and see whether we have any questions. Okay.
Hi,
Kelly?
I'm Kelly.
Hi. Okay, yes.
I'm a journalist.
Fumbling around with the technology here.
I know. I didn't know if it was your end or mine. I'm a journalist with the Granite State News Collaborative, and I was asked to cover the research. And you talked about the two different questions in sort of I'm wondering if you can comment on whether most people saw them as a dichotomy or whether there was respondents who have both faith or mistrust in both the government and the science.
Well, it's not exactly a dichotomy, but the trust in science thing is pretty overwhelming. You saw more than 75% say they did trust scientists. The faith in the federal government is somewhat more spread out. One of our previous briefs, the one that focused on the March survey, has a really interesting graphic, which I didn't show here, which is how well do you approve of President Trump's handling of the coronavirus crisis? And that question had like 7 shades of gray, from strongly approve to strongly disapprove, and it's completely hollowed out. Everybody is stacked up at the two extremes, either strongly approving or strongly disapproving. So you couldn't say it's a dichotomy, but it's very polarized.
Hey, Larry, we had someone ask a question in the chat box. Do you want to read it?
Would you kindly speak about the sample? Sure, that's a good question. And there isn't a methodological note in the recent brief, but we used to do random sample telephone surveys, cell and landlines, and during the current conditions, we've not been keeping the call center open and instead used an online panel and try to select respondents randomly and representatively from that. Then following the selection process, we sort of compare what we have, who responded, to the state's population, the adult population we're trying to represent, and make some mathematical adjustments. It's called probability weighting, so that the results that I'm reporting are as representative as we can make them in terms of the sample we got. And as I said, we had about 650 people responding to the March survey and something over 1,100 to the April survey.
I don't know. I don't think there are any more questions. I'm not sure. Oh, Kelly, and you can check the chat box there.
Okay. Do the samples represent the entire state? Yes, they do. And we weight them so they're regionally appropriate. So that is, we get people from Coast to Rockingham and everywhere in between, and try to get a reasonable geographic representation in terms of the population of the different regions.
think Kelly had a question in there too, right before that one.
Let's see. What would you like people to take from this research? Why is it important? Well, I think it's literally life and death in this case. There has been for a long time, and I've seen this in research I've been doing going back more than a decade. There have been sociopolitical divisions regarding science. There's some very strong tendency to reject science that conflicts with some people's political beliefs. And that has been applied to a whole bunch of different things. And what we've seen actually sort of with blinding speed with this brand new coronavirus development is that a lot of the attitudes that were developed in rejection of science in connection with things like climate change were transferred to rejection of science in connection with epidemiology, with medical research. And it's literally true in that it's some of the same actors, but it's also a little bit less obviously true in terms of very much the same arguments being used, transferred from one domain to the other. So this is sort of, in a sense, it may seem to people like it's coming from nowhere, but it really isn't. There's been a long history of scientists warning about something like this could happen and trying to build an infrastructure to deal with it if it did, and other people rejecting those warnings and basically hollowing out much of the infrastructure that could have been deployed against COVID-19. Okay, do we have one last question as we wrap up here? Okay, and Kelly asks if we'll do a May survey. We will certainly do one this summer. I don't think we currently are budgeted to do another one in May, but I would expect probably July, if not sooner. So this is definitely something to be watching. It's, even though, as I pointed out with the pandemic, the situation has evolved very dramatically in a very short time. That early exponential growth, then the sort of buying time with the stay at home, and now maybe stay at home is going to be relaxed, so we'll see a resumption of rapid growth. Things are changing rapidly, and yet you saw great stability in the survey responses, both in terms of what people believed and in terms of what they said they were doing. And I would not be surprised if a lot of that stability persists, because we're dealing with not information that people are gaining on the spot by reading new things and changing their mind, but by it sort of clicking into things that were already part of their socio-political identity. And I would say that I can, if people are interested in corresponding with me or with my my co-author, Tom Safford, we're easy to find by email from the Carsey website, and we're generally happy to share more information about what we do and answer questions and talk to people who are interested in this. So with that, I guess we're wrapping up this very brief webinar, and thank you for your attention. I hope you found it interesting.